everybody. I thank everybody for coming tonight. Just to make sure you all are in the right spot, you haven't joined the wrong webinar. This is Back to Home Basics, Fresh Start, simple and effective ways to disaster-proof your home. So please know at the current time and throughout the evening, this is being recorded. I want to welcome you all on this beautiful spring day. I hope you all got a good dose of vitamin D today. I'm Bernie Wiesen. I'm the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Rensselaer County Executive Director. And I just want to briefly put in a little commercial for what CCE is, Cornell Cooperative Extension. We are local arm to Cornell University, which is our land-grant university here in New York State. And we help residents put research and knowledge to work to help strengthen communities and improve the quality of life for all. Just want to make a little disclaimer. Any reference to businesses or specific products are done so only for educational purposes. They are not an endorsement. And a few basics about your device. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Tonight, I would encourage you to take a little look at your device. Because there's a panel of us, you can control what you see. So you should see a little set of squares and you can go ahead and select speaker view, or you can see panel view. You can control that piece. The other thing I want to make sure you're aware of is part of our proceedings for tonight are going to be sharing videos. Sometimes the audio gets lost in transition. So again, that might be a time where you on your own device will need to adjust your own audio to hear properly. Let's see. Tonight, we don't have a question and answer box, but we do have a chat box. So we are going to encourage you to put all of your questions in the chat as they come to you. Throughout the course of the evening, we will get to all of the questions. There's been a lot of work done on this session for tonight, and I want to thank everyone who has already put many hours, knowledge, and thought into our production tonight. And I want to go ahead and introduce our panelists. I'm going to start out with Erin Walsh with her lovely cat. She's a Cornell Cooperative Extension of Rensselaer County board member. She's a master food preserver with a master's degree in food systems. Erin has worked at the Honest Weight Food Co-op and has served on their board of directors and had been a mainstay for our Back to Home Basics series that we started in the fall. So thanks, Erin. Another one of our panelists is actually Corey Walsh. And Corey is a New York State licensed professional engineer and code enforcement official with a background in civil engineering and also an Army Reserve officer with the Army Corps of Engineers with experience in managing base camp facilities and utility infrastructure. So he's very well qualified to be talking about the topics he's talking about tonight. We thank him in advance. Last but not least is Mary Lee Kopacci, and she is the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Rensselaer County Board President, a mass food preserver as well, a local volunteer, and the guiding force behind our Back to Home Basics series, which launched in the fall. Mary Lee will be our guide tonight, watching our chat box and managing our question and answers. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the first portion of the evening, which is going to focus on healthy homes. So we're going to start with a piece from our from our Healthy Homes educator, Karen Koblenski. The best way probably to disaster-proof your home is to start out with a healthy home, much like our immune system. We, if we're prepared, are going to be better prepared if we're starting with a very healthy and managed well home, which is not overwhelming. Karen has a very good way about her. She's going to actually talk through video what someone would experience if they had a healthy homes visit. So please stay tuned as I transition to that video.
Hi everyone, my name is Karen Koblenski. I am a Healthy Neighborhoods Educator over here in Rensselaer County at Cornell Cooperative Extension. And I thank you so much for tuning in tonight to take some time and learn more about the Healthy Neighborhoods program. What is the Healthy Neighborhoods program, you ask? Well, it is a free health and safety program that is offered to folks out in the community, in which we do help to promote a healthier and safer living environment. You're probably wondering how you would qualify for the Healthy Neighborhoods program. We do not have any income requirements. We do serve specific target areas in both Rensselaer County and Albany County. Please note that if you do not see your area listed on our program flyer, we do make special accommodations for folks that have some high needs. In this video, I will be recreating a scenario of how a home visit may go when a topic needs to be talked about in a little more depth. Please note that the Healthy Neighborhoods program is operating completely virtually. We are then, after following up with the virtual home visit, dropping off with no contact to you right to your front door.
Here is a simple checklist that we use within the program with every participant, and we then ensure that if there is an area that needs improvement, we provide education as well as products to help make the living environment healthier and safer.
For tobacco control, is there any smoking in the home? This can be a trigger for those with asthma. For lead safety, this is for homes that are built before 1978. Is there any chipping, peeling, deteriorated, chalking, paint, indoors or outdoors? For fire safety, are there functional smoke detectors on every floor with living space? Do you have a functional fire extinguisher? Do all of your exits function properly? Are there any electrical hazards? Do you have any improperly stored flammables? And do you have exit drills put in place, and do you practice them? For indoor air quality, do you have a working carbon monoxide detector? Does every room in your home have ventilation? Do you feel like you have an excessive amount of humidity? Any malfunctioning appliances that could possibly result in an air hazard? Do you feel like you get a significant amount of dust in your home? Do you have any evidence of mold or mildew? Has your home been tested for radon before? For general conditions, is there any significant clutter, improperly stored garbage or rubbish either in your dwelling or near your building? Is there any evidence of rats, mice, or cockroaches? Any food or harborage for them? Do you have any concerns about bed bugs? Walls, ceilings, doors, floors, and stairs, are they all in good repair? Do you have any roofing, structural, or plumbing leaks?
First part of the questionnaire is basically we'll go over a little bit of demographic information. I already know your name and your home address, so we've got all that. I just also need to know anyone else that's in the home. If you can tell me their names and ages, please. And I do need to ask questions just to collect some demographic information about whether you are a high school graduate or have a GED, receive food stamps, and if anyone is a smoker in the home, and if anyone has asthma in the home.
Why do you ask about asthma?
So asthma is actually a really big focus within our program. We come across a lot of folks out in the community that have asthma or have children that have asthma, and there's a lot of environmental triggers in the home that actually can make asthma worse. And we'll go through those things that can potentially be triggers as we go through the survey together. As you can see, I did come in with a mop and a bucket full of items. So something that's really great that we do provide to everyone that gets a home visit is a bunch of cleaning supplies. So these are goodies that anybody can use, but we definitely like to make sure that people have cleaning supplies that are appropriate for, you know, pest control and like we had mentioned earlier, asthmatics. So there's a lot of people out there that have asthma, and some toxic harsh chemicals in cleaning products can actually trigger their asthma, such as bleach. So we like to give you some bleach alternatives for doing, you know, your typical house cleaning. Indoor air quality is a huge focus for our program. Carbon monoxide can be given off also and be dangerous, even if there isn't a fire in your home.
Well, what gives off the carbon monoxide?
So let me tell you the sources that are listed here, which are the main sources for carbon monoxide in a home. So your car left running in a garage, portable generators, a water heater vent pipe that's disconnected or corroded, portable kerosene or gas heater, loose or broken vent pipes, a kitchen range or vent that's not properly ventilated, so there's not a way for the carbon monoxide to ventilate and escape, so it builds up. Operating a grill indoors, or gas or wood burning fireplace. So there are a lot of sources in a home that can cause carbon monoxide to build up and then become dangerous to you.
Wow.
So it's not just a fire that you have to worry about carbon monoxide with. And we do suggest having one of these on each level of your home.
Oh, okay.
We want to make sure that you can hear this carbon monoxide alarm go off if you're sound asleep. If everyone's sound asleep and you can't hear this, that's a problem. You can sleep straight through carbon monoxide poisoning and you can actually die from it. So it's very dangerous. And you also want to be aware that even if this carbon monoxide alarm doesn't go off, if it's not picking up a really, really high level, if anyone has any medical issues or small children, elderly, they can have signs and symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning even earlier than when this picks up. So a lot of times it can be, definitely. So you just want to watch for any signs and symptoms that anyone is feeling very groggy, out of it. You can kind of feel like you're coming down with a cold or something, just very tired, disoriented, and the best thing to do is get fresh air. The carbon monoxide alarms that we provide, they are plug-ins, so they plug right into your outlet, and they have a battery backup in them. So if your power was to ever go out, it'll automatically back up on the battery for you, and you'll still know if there's a high level of carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide alarms are good for about 10 years as well, just like the smoke detectors. So it's really good to install both at the same time, and then you'll know that everything needs to be replaced in 10 years. We do suggest having one on each level of your home, just like I said, to make sure that you can hear this go off from your sleeping space. We also want to make sure that on each level, when you do plug it in, you don't want it directly next to the source. So for example, you don't want to put this right next to your furnace, but you still want it down in the basement. And the reason for that is you don't want any faulty readings and it picking up that there's a high level when there's not. So that can happen. So if you have any questions about where to place them, I can definitely help you figure that out. We have a big focus on fire safety. So having at least one smoke detector working in your home is very, very important. So that's part of what our program does, is we will make sure that you have at least one.
So how many smoke detectors should I have?
So we can go over the layout of your home, and then I can help you try and figure out how many altogether you might need. It is suggested to have at least one on each level, and then we can add additionals based on if you have, you know, areas that are way in the back of the home that you may want to cover, bedrooms if you would like to cover those. Okay. There's a test button on here, and there's also a hush button. So I will show you with a smoke detector that you already have up how you can test for it, because they are up high. I have my trusty mop with me. There is one of the smoke detectors that you have installed in your home. I am going to just give it a quick test. It will be pretty loud, and then I will hush it to show you how you can turn the alarm off.
nice and loud. Another part of fire safety that we make sure is that everyone has a working fire extinguisher in their home. So this is the fire extinguisher that we provide. It's an ABC dry chemical.
I don't know how to use one of those.
Oh, not a problem. I can show you how to use it. It's very simple. All of the directions are on the box and they are actually listed on the fire extinguisher themselves. So, and one thing I do suggest is to keep it out of the box because you may fight with it to get it out, and in the case of an emergency, you want to have it so that you can just grab it quick and go. So right here you can see that everything is listed, the directions for you, and as I was saying, it is an ABC dry chemical, so A is for trash, wood, and paper, B for flammable liquids, and C for electrical equipment. So the only thing that you wouldn't want to use this fire extinguisher on is a grease fire.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've ever had a grease fire before, but the best thing to throw on that is salt. You can also use baking soda to put a grease fire out. So this right here just shows you that your gauge right here is full. That's your pressure gauge. So you always want to just make sure that that's full.
Okay.
And this is the factory manufacturing tag right here, and this is made so that you can easily break that when you pull the pin if you had to go use it. So you would pull that pin out. Okay. You're going to aim that at the bottom of the fire, which is called the base. You squeeze the handle and you sweep it back and forth. So we use an acronym PASS to help you remember that. P-A-S-S. P for pull, A for aim, S for squeeze, and S for sweep back and forth.
Great. That's easy to remember.
Any other questions about the fire extinguisher?
No, thank you.
All right, that's great. So we'll make sure that you have one of those. And it's really great to keep that in your kitchen, even though we say no grease, but there's a lot of appliances in there. So we do like to make sure that I know that when we had talked originally, you were concerned about making sure that your little ones were safe in the home, and I brought a bunch of child safety items, so you're welcome to have whatever you would like. We do have the stove knob covers, we have doorknob covers, we have different cabinet locks here, and outlet covers, and even for the blinds to wrap up the long cords, we have those. So there's a lot of child safety items, and you know, like I said, anything you want is yours to make sure.
I want them all.
Awesome. We just want to make sure that the kids are safe.
Great.
So I'm really excited to announce that we do now have thermometers in our program. So oral thermometers. Great. And I love giving these out to families that are quarantined at home or just really need to keep track of their temperature for work purposes, or you know, whatever it is that they're doing, or the little ones to make sure they're not sick before they go to school. So these are a really great handy tool, and everyone is entitled to have a thermometer when they get a Healthy Neighborhoods visit.
Thank you so much for watching. Please know that I am available to answer any questions that you may have, and I would love to provide anyone with additional resources, whether it be printed material or referrals to organizations or entities that may be fitting of your needs. To show my appreciation to everyone, I will be providing a reusable Healthy Neighborhoods tote bag, which can be mailed to you personally or provided while your products are dropped off if you do sign up for a Healthy Neighborhoods program. Thank you and have a great evening.
Okay. So Mary Lee, do we have any questions in the chat? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, there are no questions in the chat, but I would like to welcome people to share with us what part of the county they're from, or if they're from another area. That's one thing. And also, I just had a couple of, also to share a takeaway from that last segment, something that you said, I didn't know that. So if you would put that in the chat box too. I found a couple of things, which was the grease fire salt or baking soda rather than the fire extinguisher. That was an important thing. And the asthma triggers, how prominent they are. So maybe others have a different takeaway. That was a surprise to them. So,
Yeah. So we want to thank Karen for making that production available to us. Unfortunately, she wasn't available to be live, but she is excellent. And I would invite any of you to reach out to her. I am going to be sending out a post program email, so everybody will have her contact information. And with that, if there are no questions, I will go ahead and transition happily to Erin, who's going to cover everything and anything to do with food storage.
And Bernie, a question did just pop up in the chat about the
Thank
you.
radon
Okay,
testing.
perfect.
Maybe you could answer it before I go on.
yeah, I just lost it. Do you have radon testing for homes and well waters?
So the answer is yes, we do have radon kits. We don't do well water, but we do have some sources of where you can send your water. So when I send out my post program email, reach right out to Karen. You'll have that contact information. Okay.
We do have a second question.
Okay.
And it's from Joe, and he says, which fire extinguisher should I get for home? A, B, or C, or ABC?
You know what I'm going to do with that, Joe? I'm actually going to send that out to Karen, and we'll include that answer in our post email, or I'll try to do a little homework while Erin is doing her session.
Great questions.
Thanks.
And we have Bev from Reinhardt. Bev, excuse me, from Able Park popped in too. So
Excellent.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Okay, yeah, so as Bernie mentioned, my name's Erin, and I'm going to be talking about emergency food preparedness and how we do it at our house, and then just some other hints and tips of ways to do it. So I'm just going to pull up a PowerPoint that I have here. Let's see. Can people see that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
Yep.
Great. Let's just make it full screen. How do I make it full screen? Oh, darn it. Present. There we go. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to cover in this is food preparedness for both short-term and long-term. And when we refer to short-term, what we're talking about is 3 days to 2 weeks, that type of thing, time length. Whereas long-term, we're referring to a year or more. In our house, we have food on hand for about 3 to 5 months at a time.
You gotta put that on the other screen.
What?
You have to put that
Sorry, my husband's telling me that you guys are not seeing what I'm seeing.
there it is.
Okay, sorry about that.
and then maximize, you got-
Okay, now that's good.
Perfect.
Okay, my apologies. So yeah, in our house, we keep food on hand for about 3 to 5 months at a time, and we mostly follow the short-term procedures, and we just kind of extend it out. So having food on hand for 3 days is something that, you know, a lot of us probably do have already. And it's also something that we're most likely to encounter. You know, usually once a winter or so, at least we get a big storm where either we may lose electricity. We live in a very rural area, rural county here, or the roads just aren't great and we aren't wanting to go out. Being stranded at home, either without ways to get to food or without electricity for longer times, though, is certainly something I think we're all familiar with. We just witnessed what happened in Texas. And I think a lot of the footage we saw of supermarkets beforehand, you know, shelves were just empty. It's also something we experienced about a year ago at the start of the pandemic. So having an emergency food supply already on hand means that when those emergencies do happen, like for us with the pandemic, we didn't have to go out. We were able to stay at home. We also weren't then putting additional strain on the food system. We weren't going and having to stock up, so that food could then be there for other people to purchase and to have to eat. Okay, so getting started. What you want to do, like I said, a lot of people already have food on hand for 3 days, maybe up to 2 weeks. But something also to consider with how much food you're having on hand is, do you eat out a lot? And maybe you don't quite have as much food, or the food you have on hand isn't going to give you the most well-balanced meals. So where we want to start with is you want to inventory the food you already have. Go through your cabinets, go through your freezers, and really you want to write down everything. You want to write down expiration dates. You want to get a really good idea of what you have before you start and go any further. You also want to inventory your storage options. Oddly, for longer term food storage, the kitchen is a really bad place to store food. You want to be storing food in places that are cool, that are dry, and that are dark. And kitchens are awfully, you know, if you're cooking in them, they get warm, they get humid, you're opening cabinets, they don't stay dark. So good places for that. If you have a basement, stairwells, closets are all good places. I love the picture Bernie showed at the beginning for under bed, of the food under the bed, because that is a great place, especially if you're in a small space. I've absolutely had friends in apartments storing food in closets or under their beds. And even if you have a small space, I'll just, you know, think creatively. There's one woman in the tiny house community, Tammy Strobel, and I think their house is 150 square feet, and they keep a 3-month supply of emergency food on hand. So it absolutely is doable. The other thing to think about with storage options, I had mentioned the basement as a great place to store food. However, if you live in a flood zone and floods are something that you would be concerned about, then the basement might not be a great option for you. You'd probably want to think about elsewhere in your house. So once you have an inventory of what you have, you want to make a list of all the family members in your house and any special dietary requirements or considerations they may have. So do you have an infant that would need infant formula? Pets also need to eat food. Anyone on a special diet. And, you know, if they're members of your family, you're probably already used to buying these foods. It's just helpful to actually write it all out, because when something becomes every day, sometimes we then forget about it, and you wouldn't want that to be forgotten in the case of an emergency. Then you can go and you can plan out some simple meals. Once you have those meals planned out, whether it be for 3 days, for a week, for 2 weeks, you want to gather your ingredients. And so you can go back and check the list of foods that you already have inventoried, see what you have, and then you can move from there. Now, there's kind of 2 ways to go about this. Is one, you can gather everything together and put it in a zip top bag or some type of waterproof container and put it away somewhere safe, cool, dry, and label it as emergency food and know that it's there. The other way you can do about it is create a large stock and just make sure that you always have that food in your house and that you're using it and rotating it. That's the method that we use. With either method, you will need to rotate it. So if you're not using the constant rotation, then you want to put it on your calendar, mark it somehow to know when you should go check on the food and rotate it to make sure that it doesn't expire. And I will say just a quick note on use by, there's use by dates and there's best by dates. You usually see use by dates on perishable foods, so meats, dairy food. that you want to eat the food or freeze it by that date. You'll also see best by dates more on shelf stable foods. And what that means is after the best by date, the food's not going to make you sick. It's not gone bad. It's just that the quality will lessen. So it might change color a little. You might start to lose some nutrients. Usually it's not a big deal. I will make sure to say though, that the one time it is a very big deal is if you are storing infant formula. Infant formula 100% needs to be used by that date because the nutrient depletion would be critical. So once you've planned out your meals, you've got the ingredients all ready, you also want to think about how you're going to prepare it. If the emergency that you're thinking of, you don't have electricity, how are you going to cook the food? Do you have a grill you could use? Do you have a camp stove? If it's something portable like a camp stove, you can store that with your emergency supplies. The emergency food, using something like disposable plates, disposable cutlery, that could prevent you from having to then wash dishes and use up extra water. And then another thing when you're planning out the meals, if you are using the rotation system, or I guess either system, if some of the items are fresh items, like you drink a lot of milk in your house where that's normally perishable, you could choose to then stock some dry milk, shelf stable milk. And then my biggest thing is just start where you are and go from there. Maybe you're someone who eats out a lot or you go grocery shopping every day and the idea of having a year's supply is really daunting. Don't start with a year. Start at 3 days. Buying a year's worth of food is a lot. It can also be very expensive to do all at once. Okay, so that's a lot of looking at words. I'm gonna, oh no, here's some more words, but I'll show you. So this is one of the pages I keep. This is our pantry shopping list. And so, like I said, I use that rotation system. So these are foods that I like to have on hand in my house all the time. And this just gets pinned right up in the pantry. And that way, whenever we're running low on something, either I or whoever else in the house notices that we're running low, we circle it, we know that we then need to go buy it. So that's how we're able to keep a constant backstock of foods and always have those food items on hand for when we're cooking. Okay, so this is an example. This is the pantry that we have in the kitchen. Like I mentioned earlier, kitchens aren't great places for long-term storage. So I keep small quantities of our dry goods in the kitchen, but then I do longer-term storage elsewhere. So this is a 5-gallon white food grade bucket that I use to store different grains. So this has rolled oats in it. As you can see, the rolled oats are getting very low. They're on our list right now to stock up on. So everything gets labeled and dated. So we bought 25 pounds of oats back in November. So it's taken us about 4 months to go through those. And so that's these buckets are a great way to store grains and beans. You can buy them online. I think you can buy them at Home Depot as well. You just want to make sure that it is actually food grade plastic. So these are that same bucket. This is just the side view. So you can see I have them stocked up. This is just our downstairs coat closet. There's usually a vacuum that's in the that lives right there, and our suitcases are behind the food, but we did eke out some room to make sure that we had food on hand. Usually when you hear about emergency food storage, you don't think fresh produce, but I don't really see why you wouldn't include it. A lot of vegetables can store for a really long time, especially the winter vegetables. Like here, we've got a bunch of different squashes. Onions are great keepers, sweet potatoes. We also store potatoes and carrots and a bunch of root vegetables. And you can either buy those from farms throughout the year and store them, or one of the great things about supermarket vegetables is they've often been considered and bred for their storage ability. So if there's, you can just go to your Hannaford or wherever and buy a bunch of potatoes, apples, carrots, all those items store really well, and keep those on hand. That way you can have actual fresh produce, which, is better tasting, at least I think, than, canned or dehydrated, although those are certainly great options as well. As you can see on the picture on the right, these right here are canned carrots, tomato sauces. So these are canned goods. As was mentioned, we preserve a lot of our own food, but absolutely you can use commercially canned goods to store as well. Again, you want to make sure they're somewhere cool, dry, and dark. With commercial canned goods, you don't have to worry as much about the light as you do with glass canning jars, because they are that much more protected, but definitely keeping them somewhere cool and dry. And the great thing about having canned foods on hand is they are ready to eat. So they're already cooked. If you don't have electricity, you can just eat them as is. A quick note also about canned goods. As I mentioned before, if you're in a flood zone, you need to take some consideration for storage. If you have canned goods that survive a flood, if they are commercially canned goods, you can clean them and still use them. Home canned goods, if they're in a flood, do need to be thrown out, unfortunately. And I'll have some resources at the end that if that is information you would need to know if floods are a concern for you, of how to properly clean and disinfect canned goods after a flood. Okay, so freezers. Freezers are a great option for short-term food emergencies. If you have a lengthy amount of time with no electricity, no backup power, then freezers, they need electricity to run. So we keep two types of freezers. We keep ours out in our barn. If you're going to keep your freezers in not your house, so the barn or garage or even an unfinished basement, what you want to look for freezers is garage ready. And this means that they can withstand temperatures, external temperatures, outside temperatures of 0 to 110 degrees and still run properly. Otherwise, if we kept these freezers outside, they could stop running if it got too hot or too cold. So the chest freezers on the right, that's looking down. Those are less expensive option. They're great for storing like single options. As you can see, I mostly just have whole chickens in there. We have some frozen blueberries, but you would have to dig through a lot of things. On the left is a reach-in freezer. Those are great for storing multiple items. They are a good amount more than a chest freezer though. If your power does go out, items in your freezer will stay good to use for 2 to 3 days. And I can actually speak from experience. Our stand-up freezer accidentally got unplugged a couple of summers ago. So for 3 days in August heat, it was without power. And thankfully I found it on the 3rd day. The food inside still had ice crystals in it, so it was still safe to eat, thank goodness. So as long as the food inside still has ice crystals in it and or the temperature hasn't gone above 40 degrees, you can still eat the food. If you know you're going to lose power and your freezer isn't full, a full freezer is going to stay frozen longer, then you can throw in some gallon jugs, plastic jugs of water. They'll freeze, they'll help keep it colder longer. That can also then be your emergency water. And also you can put blankets around the freezer. You just want to make sure that you don't block the back panel where there's any airflow. Okay, so this is just some more fresh produce that I've stored. So on top we have some apples. On the bottom we have carrots. Those have stayed that way since this fall. We're still eating both of them. And then these are just the 4 conditions for storing different varieties of fresh fruits and vegetables. And I do have, again, a couple of links at the end for some resources. If you are interested in storing produce this way, I find it a really effective, great way to keep fresh produce around. So we'll get you those resources that can certainly talk more about that. Okay, so now in an emergency, when an emergency happens. So either at the start when you're prepping all of your food items, or if you know the emergency is coming, you want to put an inventory list on refrigerators and freezers. This way, if you do need to go in there to get food, you don't want to keep opening and shutting the doors because you're going to lose cold air that way. So you really want to keep the amount of times you open the doors to a minimum. You want to, and this is an emergency if you're without power. You want to eat the foods first. You want to eat foods in the refrigerator, the freezer, and then move on to shelf stable food. And like I mentioned with the flood, you do want to just inspect and, if need be, clean any foods before eating, especially if you've had foods that have been stored away. Any canned goods, you want to make sure that they haven't rusted at all. You want to make sure there aren't any bulges, because that's an indicator that the food is unsafe and could definitely make you sick. When you're eating your foods, planning your meals, you want to include as much variety as possible, and you want to aim to eat at least one well-balanced meal a day. You also want to drink 2 quarts of water a day. That 2 quarts is based on a 2,000 calorie diet. It's 1 quart per 1,000 calories. So if it's a younger kid or just someone that doesn't consume that many calories, you could get by on 1 quart, but you do want to plan for 1 gallon of water per person per day to account for cooking meals and washing. You want to take in adequate calories and then include any vitamins, minerals, or protein supplements to make sure you're staying nutritionally, uploaded there. If it's a 3-day thing, that's not as important, but once you get to longer to that, you really want to make sure you're eating well. Okay, so now for long-term, this is if, there was a serious emergency and we were really cut off from our food supply. So this list is from the University of Georgia, and this is what they recommend you have at home on supply for a year. With these items, you can create a nutritionally balanced diet. So there's these items here on the left. These numbers here are the amount per person per year, as well as their shelf life. And you will see they have vitamin C added as a supplement to make sure you're getting that vital nutrient. These are some further items to supplement those bulk staples on the previous page, again from the University of Georgia. And again, I have more listed in the resources that you can check out. These are suggestions, just take them, consider your own family needs. So for instance, I don't think I've eaten 42 pounds of cornmeal in my life, but I do eat a lot of flour and dried beans. So I would probably not have as much cornmeal stored, well, as where I would store more of other items. And then I think lastly, so this is how I keep track of what we have stored, as well as how long it takes me to go through this. So this started, so this is a screenshot, so I can't scroll through. It started out just as a way for me to keep track of what I was preserving each season. But I do now include things like grains and beans and how long it takes us to go through them. So I have the item here, how it's stored or preserved, the quantity, the date I preserved it, and then the date finished. So you can certainly use this for any, either your own preserved food or food that you have purchased. Okay, and so that's that. So these are those resources that I mentioned. These first three here are from the University of Georgia. I didn't mention much about water other than you want a gallon per person per day. This is a great resource. It tells you how to properly store water. We just use 5-gallon jugs. And then it also talks about where you can get water in case you didn't have any, like different sources for getting water, both outside and purifying it, as well as in the house. Okay, so that's that.
That is fantastic, Erin. Mary Lee, are there any questions in the chat?
You're muted, Mary Lee.
I had a dog barking in the background. Yeah, I just wanted to share what Bernie had answered about the extinguisher in your home. The best overall extinguisher in your home is an ABC extinguisher. This is from Bernie. However, if you're looking to have an extinguisher specific to your kitchen or garage, you may want to have one designed for grease and/or electrical type fires, which is B and C. So Bernie, thank you. Do you have any other comments on that? Okay.
I do not, but thank you for that question, because I know that is a very common question. So that's really good. Hopefully everybody learned from that.
Yeah. And then I did ask a question that the panelists had said, hey, let's ask some questions of the participants because we'd be very interested to hear their comments. And so I did ask the question, what was your favorite comfort food for an emergency kit? And I have to say, Erin was saying, we'd make sure we have a comfort food in there. Make sure we can keep kids happy and ourselves, you know. So we've got a couple of responses. And the other question, which I'll share, the other question is, where do you store your fresh vegetables for long-term storage? Because Erin, you were saying your friend puts it under their bed because it's dark and dry and cool, like you had suggested, to make sure for certain foods. So, you know, Joe has said to us, thank you, because this has been very helpful, the things you've been sharing. He was telling us that. And I think also, Bernie, was that you? My favorite comfort food would be chocolate. Did you say that?
Something in the chocolate family.
Okay, we got your number now. We know, now we know. That's good to know. I think it's a lot of people's comfort food. Erin, you'll have to share what yours is too, yours and Corey.
Yeah.
Think about that. Meanwhile, we have Ruby.
Popcorn. We do keep a lot of popcorn on store in the house.
Nice.
Corey's behind me.
And there are a couple more comments here. And that is from Ruby. She said, I store produce for long term in a walk-in pantry separate from my kitchen. It has no windows. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Lucky to have that. That's wonderful. Yeah. And from Kay Conway, she said her favorite would be shelf-stable rice and curries. And she keeps her root veggies in a large garbage can packed in peat moss.
Yeah.
In the basement. Don't, large letters, don't keep apples near other fresh fruit or near veggies. They emit ethylene gas that ripens fruit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good
I know I did. Yeah. Yes. Especially potatoes. I think they do. They're not. Yeah. They don't get a lot of potatoes, especially. But we keep. I use the peat moss for keeping cold vegetables down in the basement because it's nice and damp. Potatoes I keep on the top of our basement steps because we have an unheated basement, and you have to make sure potatoes don't freeze. Also, if they get too cold, they turn sweet in an unpleasant way. And then we store vegetables in closets as well.
Interesting.
We've got them all over.
Boy. But Joe has said, is it possible for Erin to share the Google Drive sheets she just showed? They are very good.
The spreadsheet.
The Google Drive sheets, and he also added, can Erin show the resources again because it was a little quick? Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yes. And so Bernie, sorry, I thought we were still on share screen, but I guess not. Bernie will send out a list of all those resources, And what I'll do is tonight I'll send out, I'll just copy the spreadsheet that I use and I'll just make a public document of that spreadsheet. Then it'll be blank. I'll put a few items in there just as a, you know, to get you started, but absolutely I can make a public version of that spreadsheet. I'll send the link to Bernie and then she can send it out tomorrow.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
And Erin, you are still sharing your screen, but I'm thinking it's because Corey's going to be coming up.
There was one more.
Monitor thing's got me so confused.
There is
I
one
know,
more.
we did a practice run yesterday and everything, and I'm still mucking it up.
Oh, you're doing fabulously. The other one, there's one more, and it said, can you share the food storage list, please? This is from Audra. She says, looks like there might be some great ideas on there.
So, what would the pantry shopping list
The
or
food storage list.
Hmm.
Maybe Audra could be more specific if she would write that down.
Let's see. So this was the one I think Joe just asked me to share. And then I also had this, which was our pantry shopping. Oh, was it? And then, oh, there's also this, the where to store the produce. So this one here will be in the resources. There's two resources, a PDF as well as a full book on storing fresh produce. The book is incredibly useful. I borrow it from our library system, and it also has really ingenious ways for creative ways, places in the house to store. It's called Root Cellaring by Mike and Nancy Boobel. So Boobel, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but so I'm not sure which one of those she was referencing.
Okay, yeah. There is, let me see. One thing I wanted to do, Erin,
Yep.
before we finish, we want to check underneath how you really do storage things in your closets and under your bed. And I'm going in your house.
Is that
We're
your
gonna check it
emergency
out.
beacon, Mary Lee?
I'm gonna put a camera, pro cam on. Everybody's gonna see it at the same time live, okay? You guys are amazing. Okay, I think that's all the chats, and please keep them coming. The comments are great. This is really terrific. So thank you everybody for contributing and keep it coming. And we're gonna donate chocolate to Bernie's house. We'll keep everybody else.
That would be amazing. So with that, I'm going to cue over to Corey.
Yeah.
I'm going to thank Erin profusely for all the great information.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And
Really
we're
good
going to
job.
be moving over to Corey, who's going to take us in another closet space, I believe.
We've
And
done
we'll
lots
learn a
of
little bit about
planning.
that.
Hi, yeah, my name's Corey, and I put about a 14-minute video together that goes over our backup power supply with our generator, and we got some batteries, and kind of gives just some general information about our electrical system.
And Corey, we are so appreciative because we did have some people request specifically this topic. Thank you.
Can you see that video?
Yes, we can. We're good. Yep.
Today is our backup power generation system that we have, so that in the event that we do have a power outage, we'll have backup power that'll be able to provide electricity to our critical systems in our house. Things like making sure that our refrigerator stays on, making sure that our well pump stays on, and a few other items to our internet and a few other items that'll stay on during a power outage. So if you have a generator, or you're thinking about a generator, or you're thinking about getting one, or you're just wanting to know more about your electrical system, the first step that you want to do is to locate where your main electrical panel is. And that's what this is right here. We actually have a solar panel system tied to this as well, but this is the main panel, and then whether or not how familiar you are with it, you open it up. These are all the circuit breakers, and then these circuits, different electrical components in your house are tied to these circuits, and these are just kind of like light switches that you can turn on and off, and that'll turn on and off various appliances and plugs and outlets in the house. So you're the first step that you want to do is know where your main panel is, And then hopefully you have you have everything nicely labeled, not really like I have it, but like with a little bit more detail. I know what's what though. That tells you what appliances and plugs are connected to which switch. And then one point to kind of point out, if you really have not, if you're really not familiar at all with the electrical panel, that's okay. Probably one thing that you may want to consider is just part of a house welfare inspection maintenance type schedule is you can have a licensed electrician come in and actually take a look at your panel and do an inspection and see if there's any, circuit breakers that are running too hot, or there might be some loose wires or frayed wires. And they'll just do just a general inspection for the safety components and address any problems that you might have. I always I never do any work in the panel. I just, if any of these switches have to get pulled out and moved around, I always just have a licensed electrician do it. However, kind of just basic home maintenance issue is like if you flip a breaker, you're not getting power. It could be as simple as just turning that on and off. So that's just some basic knowledge about a panel. So our system is we have a backup generator that's powered but fueled by propane. And then when you get that installed, you'll actually get this panel here, which is essentially a sub panel. And this panel right here has a whole various circuits that will be powered by the generator in the event that there's a power outage. So under normal operations, when you have just regular electricity coming in, the electricity goes to this panel, it powers all these circuits, and there's actually one main transfer switch right here, and then that switch sends power to this panel, and then you have a whole bunch of circuits here that just power various things from like our well, dishwasher, to our bathroom, and various other components. So that when power goes out, the generator, we have what's called an automatic transfer switch. The power goes out, the generator, the transfer switch initiates and automatically turns on a generator, and then the generator powers this panel. You also want to be really careful about some people from a safety perspective. Some people try to have a generator and tie it into their systems themselves, which it can be very unsafe to do that, being that they may successfully tie their generator into their panel and get power running through their panel. However, what can actually also happen is called backfeeding the system. So you could have your generator could actually be sending power back out into the distribution panel. So if there's a utility worker expecting there to be no power in the lines, they may get a shock or electrocuted because your generator is sending power to the system. So always anything that has to do with interconnecting or setting up, get a professional licensed electrician to do all the work. So that's the backup power system. We'll turn it on in a second to show you to simulate a power outage in the generator, which we'll turn on. But another thing I want to show you is we also have some battery backup systems, primarily for electronics. So I'll show you our uninterrupted power supply right in the center here. So this here is what's called an uninterruptible power supply, a UPS. And then what that's just a battery backup, so that when power goes out, it takes a few moments to get the generator online. And if you have any sensitive electronics, here we have a network attached storage device, and this is all our network here, our modem, our router switches and access points. What that does, everything is hooked to that. What that does is that can switch over so quickly, so that when we do lose power, that battery backup, the UPS, initiates quickly enough so that it keeps all the other electronics online without shutting them off. And then that can protect some more sensitive devices from damage, so that when it does get re-energized, it may not start up properly. I also have another UPS connected to my desktop upstairs as well. One point though, that will only provide about 45 minutes of backup power. So it's really not for a long-term period. It's more to let you know that, hey, you have 45 minutes to get into your electronics and to shut them down properly. How it's utilized here is that it gives a little bit of a it protects the system until the generator comes online. Another advantage to this model is it has automatic voltage regulation, so that if voltage goes over 120, slightly over 120 or slightly under 120, it can compensate for that and protect electronics. So now what we'll do is we'll turn off the main circuit breaker on the main panel, and that should start the generator, and then that also should start the backup power, and then none of the electronics should go off. We'll see. So this right here is these are all the circuit breakers, and this one up at top is the main circuit breaker. So if you flip this one switch, it'll turn them all off, and then flipping this switch is how you simulate a power outage. And then I'll also talk about more later, but maintenance is a big component of generators. So I know about 4 times a year I flip that main switch and then have my generator run under load for about 15 minutes just to exercise it and make sure that it's working properly. So I'm going to flip this switch, and then hopefully we'll see the generator start up, and then the UPS will switch over automatically, and none of the electronics should shut off. All right, I'm going to flip the main breaker. So now the UPS turned on, and the generator should turn on. So this is the generator. This is a 10K generator that's tied into the system, and I'll go inside and I'll flip the main breaker switch, and then we can watch this turn on. And then I just wanted to also point out, this is a secondary generator that I have that's just a gas generator. You just put normal unleaded gasoline in here, and there's a bunch of plugs. There's a 240 volt and a bunch of 120 volts. So this is nice just to be mobile, to take it where you want to. And then also, a lot of times people have these generators on site, and they want to know how they can connect them into their main panel. And for that, like I had previously mentioned, you want a manual transfer switch for that. And then to have that set up, you'd want to have a licensed electrician come in and give you a port or like a connection place on the outside of the house. One thing I want to go over with everyone real quick is just to show you the process that I'm going through to document what appliances, which circuit, and what receptacles and lights are on which circuit. It's a good thing to know just to have a better understanding about how your electrical system operates. It's also a good thing to know if you're considering installing a backup generator, knowing where your critical appliances are and what on what circuits that they're on are important, so that you can know how to properly size a generator. Going through this analysis is certainly not necessary if you have a generator contract over to install a generator. They're going to know how to look at your system and give recommendations about what circuits should be on the generator panel. And what I have actually been doing over the last few years is I'm in the process of creating a diagram of all the electrical system. This is not complete. This actually just shows this is the solar panel system. This is the generator right here. This is the main panel, and this is the that generator sub panel. So I'm in the process of, whenever I'm working on the house and I figure out, what plug or what light fixture is connected to what, I've been in the process of recording that. And then this is just a floor plan of the house, and I've just been populating all the light switches, the receptacles, and the lights as kind of time permits. And then once I have all these, then I'll diagram that on the main panel and the sub panel, so then I'll have a complete picture of what items are connected to what circuits. And I also, while I'm doing that, I also have an Excel spreadsheet that just shows, this is just a panel schedule. This is the main panel, and this describes what items on what, and then it's also just some additional information about, this gets into a little bit more the details, but but the size of the breaker that goes by amps, and then the number of poles. So that would mean if it was 120 or 240 volts. And then also, then that's the main panel. This is the generator panel. And then again, this is getting kind of crazy about it, but it's good information to know. And then you want to figure out what I'm going to try to do is figure out what components are on each circuit. And then I put them in there, and I know what the amperage and the watts that the component use. Say for right here, the washer runs at 11 amps. It's got 120 volts, and it runs at 1320 watts. And then what you can do is you add up all of those, the amps and the watts on each breaker, and it should be below. So, you know, this load should be below the 20 amp load on the breaker. And if it goes in excess of that, that's when you're gonna typically see a breaker start to flip. So this is just kind of basic information I've just been collecting over time. I just wanted to show everybody how I intended on kind of tracking and managing it. One other thing I wanted to show everyone real quick is if you're wondering what receptacle or what light is connected on which circuit, one tool that I have been using is a digital circuit breaker finder. This is a fairly non-contact way to determine what's on what circuit. This little end piece right here that plugs into a receptacle, and we also have an additional piece that you could purchase that'll plug it into, you can screw it into a light, and then you take this other handle piece on the other end, and then you point it at the breaker, and then once it'll start beeping when you're pointing at the breaker that little tool is plugged into. Another backup power source that I want to review with everybody is a battery backup. So in case you live in an area where it's not practical to have a generator, or maybe you may rent, or maybe living in an apartment and work in an urban setting, one thing that I have on hand is this little portable power bank. I can get probably about 5 or 6 cell phone charges off of that. So a lot of times I'll throw that in my bag or my car, or if I'm going on vacation or something. It's nice to know that I can charge my phone, and I think you can probably run your laptop off of that as well. There are a whole bunch of other options in the battery backup field. So this right here, this is the same device that I just showed you. Goes for $40 on Amazon. And then there's other devices like this. This would be more of like a backup generator that runs just off of a battery. One thing to be aware of if you have this and you intend to use it as an emergency backup power source is you really have to maintain charge on those batteries, so that in the event that you lose power, obviously this needs to be near to fully charged as you would want it to be. And then these just go up in price from there. There's 650. They just get bigger and bigger, and more bells and whistles on them. They actually have battery systems that can power entire houses. Another great option is a solar powered bank. So this kind of will alleviate the necessity to have your batteries fully charged or near fully charged in the event of a power outage. Now you have this, obviously you can use a solar panel to charge. This would just be for charging like a cell phone or something. Another good option or something to throw in your little kit bag is this crank radio. This one right here, it's actually got a, looks like it's got a little solar panel to charge it. And then it's got also on the side, it's got a little crank to power it. And then it's just a crank radio. Okay, that is it.
Said you stole my thunder. You had
radio.
Yeah. Teasing, yeah. That was so informative because of the panels. I will go down there and just look and not touch anything. And as you say, you know, having an electrician come in and do the inspections is so important if you're, well, for every level that you're talking about. That was so, such good advice. But the labels, like if I were to go into an apartment and it wasn't labeled, I mean, they really kind of require to be labeled, aren't they? The circuit breakers?
Yeah, yes, there are, do they need to be labeled? Yes. Are they a lot of the times labeled really well? No. Because it just, if you have a house that was constructed recently, then, and you had a good electrician and you had a good electrical inspection, then they should be labeled very well. If you have a house that's like, you know, that's older or has an older system, you know, some of the labels, they're going to start falling off. You know, somebody's going to had scratched something in there by hand, you can't read it. So it's just one of those things that over time, that kind of knowledge gets lost. And it's not uncommon to have breakers that aren't labeled as well as you would want.
How often do you think you should have an electrical inspection done?
I mean, I would say at least, it could be published somewhere, but I would say you'd want one at least once every 10 years. You know, whatever your comfort, you could do it once every 5 years might be a little might be a little much if you don't expect there to be anything wrong with it. A lot of times if you purchase a home inspector will take a look at the panel and they'll be able to tell if there's something that looks funky. And then a lot of times you can have a separate electrical inspection of a home. You know, they're not very expensive. You know, they're a few $100s to have somebody that come in that really knows what they're doing and to take a look at and see if there's any safety problems.
A lot of peace of mind in that.
Yeah, sure.
We do have a question here from Kay Conroy, and it says, all this gear is so expensive for every family to have. We need better reliability from our utility providers. And just one comment back to Aaron's, Audra said either list would be helpful. Aaron, just as a response to that.
Yeah, I'll share both those. I'll share both those lists.
Okay, that would be fabulous. And I did want to say, I was going to show the crank radios because it is so amazing. I mean, it really, listen to that. You know, I mean, you'll keep your, the communications open if you have the electricity off and there were long-term problems. And also for $15, I think, Corey, yours was probably a better model by far, but one that you found was like $30 or $40. But this one I think we got online for $15, a solar panel. Make sure the cord goes with your phone. But that's really incredible. And leave it on the car dashboard sometimes when you're, just needing to leave it, when you have to go out. But it's wonderful to have this solar power like you were recommending.
Yeah, those items that I pulled up were just kind of the first things that came up on Amazon.
No, it was fabulous. And we did have a couple of people ask specifically about the generator. So that's really helpful. And anyone can call Cooperative Extension and ask additional questions. We would refer you to the professionals. So everyone here that's joined us tonight, just wanted to say that is always, we are your go-to place for answers to some of these everyday questions, everyday concerns that you have. So thank you everyone for your comments and questions. Erin and Corey, you guys are amazing. I feel like I learned so much. I hope if everybody wanted to make comments of what was, like I said, an outstanding takeaway for you tonight, we're so glad to hear, and also what your next session might be, next sessions, right, Bernie?
Yeah, I'm going to say, actually, I know everybody's going to start shooting off of here because we've been here for a while, but a lot of excellent information. We've seen that in the comments, and even myself just garnering some new information. So I really want to thank Corey and Aaron and Mary Lee for being here and all their hard work behind getting all the information together. I do also want to mention there will be, I'll remind you, a follow-up email to those of you registered, and it will have links, as Erin had indicated in her presentation, and some information about follow-up for Healthy Neighborhoods. I also encourage you, if you are not from Rensselaer County, to reach out to your respective cooperative extension office, get to know them. We like to say that we have something for everyone of all ages. So get to know them, get to know us if you're from Rensselaer County. And I really thank you for being engaged tonight. And are we good in the chat box? One last round.
See, it looks like it. I do want to remind everyone this was recorded and it will be on Cornell Cooperative Extension's YouTube video station, YouTube station. And Bernie, if you could give the address for that. And
so what I just tell people is Google CCE YouTube, CCE Rensselaer County YouTube, and it'll come up. It's also, if you go to our website, which is ccerensselaer.org, we have a direct link to our YouTube channel. So let's see. So other than that, if you'd like to take the time to put in the chat right now any ideas of future topics you might like covered. Other than that, I guess I would say you're free to go.
Two more comments.
Okay.
Kay said, thanks for the super helpful session. And Ruby said, very enjoyable and informative. Thank you all. So we thank you participants. Erin and Corey, you've been amazing, putting a lot of work and effort into it. Thank you.
Yes, very much so.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.